Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett of More Than Astrology here with part 4 of I really don't know how many episodes of the Astrology of 2019. So far, we have addressed calendar calisthenics and moved from Pluto through Neptune, Uranus, Chiron, Saturn, and Jupiter, and we find our way to our neighbor on the outside, Mars, and then on the inside, Venus, and we'll head and visit the magician Mercury today, too, as well. Before I begin, let me just say thank you so much to those of you who have sent in donations to encourage and support this project. It is much appreciated. Morethan.astrology.com is a place you can go to find me and the things that I do and events and stuff. And there's a donate link there. So absolutely no requirement, but certainly an invitation that if you're in a space to share and give back for anything you might receive here, it's always greatly appreciated. So a cup of astrology for those of you who support me in so many ways, including Hermes and Venus and all you beings. And so even you being here, participating, co-creating this space to share the astrological information, this terrestrial translation of celestial conversation is an incredible support. And I'm so honored to have an opportunity to dance with you and express what I feel is some of the portals that we can align our own energetics and intentions to this year for greatest transformation. So another way you can help out is to spread the word, simply liking this video, whether you're seeing it live on Facebook right now or in YouTube in the future, liking this video, we know it's an algorithm game, friends. And so it increases the opportunity for this word to be shared. You could share the link around directly, or you could share it on your timeline, should you be watching this on Facebook or whatever. Super helpful. And also comments are always such a wonderful thing to see that people are engaging and learning. Sorry, I haven't been able to respond to the comments in all these videos, but it's taking a lot of time to present them. And of course, I've got consultations and all sorts of other things lined up in the meantime. So I guess that's the last thing I'll say before we dive into the planetary stew, is that one of my great loves is to sit with people individually and to tune into the music of their soul song, of your soul song. So you can find at morethan.astrology.com a services page that show you how to book a session with me. Is something I would love to do when I get back from Mexico, because as we finished with Jupiter and Sagittarius last year, and I really was encouraging this idea of traveling to sacred spaces, right, around the world, far from home or close to home, whatever it may be in your own consciousness. But this is definitely a year, and let's not forget the importance and the beauty of Jupiter at home in Sagittarius, inspiring us to have that vision quest. And my own quest will bring me to Mexico to the lead retreat pretty soon, but then to a pilgrimage in Palenque, which I've been hoping to have for some time, and it's finally coming to term. My own journeys will take me to Athens, Greece for the first time this year, and I think to Istanbul and perhaps even Kemet, Egypt itself. So I'm very excited about that, and I hope that you will answer that call to have the pilgrimage, to have the journey, to have the quest, to receive the vision, because as so much of the astrological attention is being given to 2020 and the be here now, the be here now philosophy, which is like the number one thing I think of this presentation in whole, says like, look, you're living today and tomorrow and this year. Let's not fast forward through time. And even if we look ahead and say, well, that looks pretty serious, well, let's have a year of dreaming in and being free. And maybe there's things that you're saying you'll do sometime in your life, or it'd be a good year to do them. All right, enough said. So the year, what is a year? That was kind of the question primarily asked in session 1 of these transmissions, because I look at these charts here, 2019 and 2020, these are midnight January 1st, but in San Francisco, right? So we want to talk about Mars now, and I'm showing Mars on 1/1/2019 at 0 degrees and 10 minutes Aries. Well, that was the case in San Francisco, right? And just as Mars will be in Scorpio in the chart here you see on the right, January 1st, midnight 2020 for San Francisco. But so Aries and Scorpio and this travel is very fascinating because these are the two signs traditionally ruled by Mars, right? So does that make it a very Mars year? All right, you'll see that thing below. Cazimi, September 2nd, 2019. That is Earth, Sun, Mars. So Sun aligns with Mars in our heavens, in our charts, about every 24 to 26 months. And this is where we will focus our attention for the Martian cycle. To get back to this idea of this is San Francisco New Year's, and I'm showing it here on a natural chart wheel, right, where we put 0 Aries at the ascendant and just every sign is a house. It's really more of a global perspective, right? The signs are about the whole globe, right? It doesn't matter in this moment of time if I'm looking from San Francisco or Istanbul, Mars is 0 degrees and 9 or 10 minutes Aries, depending on your ephemerides. But this moment of time, New Year's, is not a moment of time, right? It's so local. It talks about where you are on the globe, right? So in San Francisco, where Libra was rising, there's Mars in this first degree of Aries. But in Christmas Island, which was the first New Year's, Mars on the right, you see in the sign of Pisces. So it's kind of a tricky thing. I mean, astrologers, more traditionally, would either go to the turnings, right? Like a solstice is a moment that's talking about the entire globe. And at December solstice, Mars is in the sign of Pisces. Or March equinox is a place where we usually say that the astrological year begins. And that's the reason why, is because that's when Sun is due east of Earth, you see, and east is the place of the rise of new beginnings. We'll see at March equinox time, Mars is in lower left there in the sign of Taurus. All right. But we're here to talk about the astrology of 2019, so we're going to do that. I just want to say that, in this year's time, if we're looking from January 1st, midnight San Francisco, 2019 to that of 2020, Mars moves from the first degree of Aries to the last degrees of Scorpio. Okay, so almost to the first degree of Sagittarius, which is 240 degrees from the first degree of Aries. In other words, 2/3 of the circle. So Mars travels, right? Mars spends on average 2 months in a sign. And so where we spoke earlier about Pluto and Capricorn and Neptune and Pisces and Uranus moving from Aries to Taurus and Chiron from Pisces to Aries and Saturn in Capricorn all year and Jupiter in Sagittarius for almost the entire year. Jupiter will head into Capricorn in November of 2019. It's different with Mars. We're not going to speak about Mars, which sign Mars is in. We could say, this is something that's done in mundane astrology, like, well, where is Mars at the March equinox, or where is Mars at the December solstice, right? It kind of defines the season ahead, or March equinox, often in the mundane realm, kind of used to describe the entire year ahead. So then Mars and Taurus or Venus and Aquarius and the way that they're squared to one another, which you may see in this chart, is very important for the year of 2019 from that type of astrological contemplation. But if we're just talking about from this year to this year, I'm not really going to look at, well, is Mars in Aries? Well, as we saw, Mars is in Aries in San Francisco for the New Year's Day of 2019, but that's not true. Most of the world, actually. So I'm not going to speak about Mars as Pisces for Greenwich, UK, or Christmas Island, where the first New Year's Day happens, or Mars in Aries, which was going down the West Coast. I'm going to speak more about the Martian cycle, because Mars in this year of 2019, this calendar year of 2019, will, for some of you Pisces, then Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, right? And almost head into Sagittarius as well. All right, so this is the distance that Mars travels in this year. And it's actually further than in other years because there is no retrograde in 2019 for Mars. We experienced that, July was the middle of the Mars. July 18 was the middle of the Mars retrograde last year, which happens for a couple months. So, you can say June, July, August, something like that. Carried 2018 held the Mars retrograde, the recent Mars retrograde, which brought Mars super close to Earth. And I'm sure you'll remember how bright and amazing red Mars was in the sky during that time. All right, so I'm going to focus more on this idea of Cazimi, in the heart of it, in the throne room, the seeding of the next Mars cycle. September 2nd, 2019. And since we are not there yet, we're going to speak about the current Mars cycle. Now, let me interrupt that and say there are many ways to pet the cosmic cat. The way that I work with the Mars cycle is different than how I was initially trained to in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, where they begin the cycle not with Sun conjunct Mars, but rather with Sun opposite Mars. And the reasoning is because that's when Mars and Earth are closest to one another. That's when Mars is rising at sunset and really dominating the sky. If you start with, as traditionally was done, and as I've been convinced to do Sun conjoined Mars, then the Sun opposite Mars is the middle of the cycle, like a full moon. But Sun conjunct Mars would be like moon conjunct Sun, new moon that begins the lunation, for example, right? Some of my other cohorts and teachers, Adam Gainsbourg is a really great astrologer to follow if you're interested in cyanotic cycles. He begins the Mars cycle when Mars first becomes visible after the Sun-Mars conjunction. There's no way to see Mars, of course, when Mars is directly behind Sun, right? So after the Sun cruises past Mars and separates from Mars by about 15 degrees, then Mars will be seen rising before sunrise. It's called the heliacal rise of Mars. That happens typically 5 to 7 weeks after the Sun-Mars conjunction. And in this last cycle, it was, by 15 degrees nomenclature or standard, that would have been September 11th, 2018, where Mars first showed himself in, I believe, the sign of Virgo. But I've just tuned in, as others have. Adam Summer is a good example, another wonderful astrologer who's very cycle-based. I've just come to see that Cazimi, that seeding of Sun-Mars, is kind of where it's at. And Adam Gainsbourg works, I think he calls that the inception. It's kind of like when the conception's happening, but then he's working with the visible Mars in a way as its birth. Daniel Jamario, Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, working with the most visible Mars rising at sunset, that's Sun opposite Mars, which happened in July of 2018 in the sign of Aquarius. But that's the time where now Mars is going to be at the height, at the midheaven, in the middle of the night. Adam Gainsbourg come to call this time of the cycle midnight star, which I love. And it's a very significant shift in the cyclical energy anyway. But I see personally like that is a cyclical shift, in this case, of a Leo cycle, that it was July 27th, 2017, right? These are 24 to 26 month cycles. They're not short. Go all the way back then, which is, very close to August 21st, 2017, which was that total solar eclipse at Regulus that was visible in the United States. And so many of us made a big deal of it. I mean, it did a lot of magic for so many of us, including me. But we go all the way back then, July 26, 2017, for the last Sun-Mars conjunction. And notice that I keep saying Sun-Mars, Sun conjoined Mars, Sun opposite Mars, and not Mars conjunct Sun. I'm a stickler about this because it opens energies and awareness of the astronomical and therefore astrological motion and happening that's not available when we say Mars conjunct Sun. I owe a great debt of gratitude to Kent Bai, who's an astrologer, a great dude, friend, who I think it was just like my third ever astrology presentation in Portland when I was talking about the Pluto square Uranus aspect in transit. Kent, after the talk, said, "Hey man, that's Uranus square Pluto, not Pluto square Uranus." I said, "What's the difference?" Well, this is what the difference is. You speak the name of the faster moving planet first, because it is that planet that applies to, perfects, and then separates from the, happening, the aspect between planets. So Sun moves faster than Mars, which is a weird thing to say, right? In in a heliocentric cosmology with the sun at the center of it all, right? It's a very strange thing to say. The sun, from that, very basic levels of that perspective of or philosophy, doesn't really move at all. We have to remember that we are looking astrology on what's happening on Earth. We're Earthlings. It's a very Earth-centric or geocentric perspective, our charts, and it should be, because that's our perspective, right? Excuse me. But when you're looking at the speed of the sun through the zodiac, it's 1 year. Why? Because that is our experience of Earth orbiting the sun in a year, right? Mercury in 88 days, Venus in 225 days, Earth in 365. These are Earth days, 365.242199 and change for this one, right? And for Mars, well, about 2 years. 780 days is the number that was used from the Mayan perspective. But now we're getting into the difference between the length of a planet's orbit about the sun and the length of the synods. Sun conjoined Mars happens about every 780 days. So when we look at the sun's motion through the zodiac and speak about that speed, it's actually a reflection of Earth's speed, right? So the further from the sun, the slower the planet. The Mercury's fastest, then Venus, then Earth, then Mars, then Jupiter, then Saturn, etc., right? So when you look at the Chaldean order, the traditional ordering of the planets, which goes Earth, right? It actually doesn't go Earth. In that cosmology, Earth isn't necessarily moving, right? The fastest moving is Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, beyond, right? Well, the motion of the sun, again, the annual orbit of the sun through the zodiac is actually a reflection of Earth's orbit about the sun. So if we look from the sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, right? So when we say sun, Mars, of course, sun's moving faster, because when we think about the sun's motion through the zodiac, it is actually a reflection of the Earth's motion about the sun, right? So we know that I'm a nerd for the astronomy of astrology, and maybe I'm staying there a little bit longer than necessary. But importantly, when we show this synodic information, if we want to compare, as we often do in these cycles, a planetary synod to the lunation cycle, the synodic cycle of moon and sun, because we experience in that waxing to full and waning from full to new of the lunation every 29.5 days, this great essence of seeding and sprouting and, as I love to say, flowering and fruiting, which carries the seeds for the next cycle in these beautiful cycles. Well, if I want to take that cosmology from the principal phases of new moon, waxing half moon, full moon, waning half moon, or astrologically speaking, conjunction, opening square, opposition, closing square, and apply that to the Mars-Sun cycle, I have to understand that it is actually a Sun-Mars cycle. Because if I want to apply this cosmology of moon-sun to Mars, I'm now speaking Sun-Mars. It is sun that moves faster. It is sun that activates these aspects. And if I want to go there, well, then even though I cannot see a new moon unless it is in eclipse, and we are in an eclipse cauldron right now, but we have to be in special places on the earth even to see the shadow of a solar eclipse, right? Typically, we do not see a new moon. It's a no moon, and many cultures began the month with that first visible crescent in the west after sunset. Diana's bow, the goddess of the moon, shooting arrows back at her brother Apollo, Helios, the sun below. That's the visible new moon, right? The new moon, like the moon conjoined sun, it's like a no moon, right? And so these are a lot of the things, just sharing some of the conundrums of these cosmological contemplations, of why people have very different point of views of when the cycle begins, etc. But if we begin the cycle, the Sun-Mars synodic cycle, and synod means meeting, the meeting of Sun and Mars. If we begin it as Sun applies to Mars and conjoins Mars, well, that last happened in July of 2017, July 26, 2017, in the sign of Leo, 4 degrees and 12 minutes Leo. And then through these contemplations, that would remain a sensitive place of the chart, right? For this next about 780 days between Kazimis. The next one will be this year of 2019, 9 degrees and 41 minutes Virgo. You can see there at the bottom line here on September 2nd, 2019, right? So Sun conjoined Mars. Between these two conjunctions, Sun sextiles and then squares Mars and then trines Mars and opposes Mars and trines Mars and squares Mars on the other side. And that study, which is one of my favorite things to teach and to bring people into in contemplations of their own nativity, right? Your nativity, your birth chart, your song is a moment in time, but that doesn't mean the earth stopped spinning or orbiting for you, man. And it doesn't mean that things weren't happening on the way into this moment of glory that is called you, right? And so we want to learn to see motion in the chart in so many ways. And the study of the synodic cycles and the rhythms, and the choreography of the planets brings us into the deep expansion of astrological awareness. All right. So anyway, maybe more than I need to share about that whole trip, and yet not enough. But just to say that we are currently in a Leo cycle that was seeded in July of 2017, the sprout with the Sun in the sign of Aries and Mars in the sign of Capricorn. Interestingly, because traditionally Aries is a domicile of Mars and Capricorn is the sign where Mars is exalted. And that happened in March of 2018, very close to the equinox. And then July 26, 2018, look at that, exactly 1 year after the conjunction, Sun opposed Mars, 5 degrees and 9 minutes Leo, right? That's where the Sun was. It literally returned to the place of the seed, and Mars was in Aquarius. There was a total lunar eclipse, the longest total lunar eclipse of our lifetime. Mars was very close. It was a very powerful time, but be here and now. Let's talk about 2019. And yet I am talking about 2019 when I mention that because we are still in this cycle of Sun and Mars. And the third quarter, the fruiting, the wisdom stage of the cycle began December 2nd, 2018, very recently, with Sun at about Antares, the 11th degree of Sagittarius, and Mars was in Pisces at the time. And now Mars is in Aries. And the next Sun-Mars conjunction will be 10th degree of Virgo, September 2nd, 2019. Okay, so just to come into this kind of cyclical cosmology, it's very easy to compare Sun, outer planet, to Moon, Sun, the lunation. Things get a little trickier with Venus and Mercury. We're going to go there some today. I don't know if we're going to go as far as I intended to because I have consultations beginning not too long from now. So we'll see. I mean, maybe we'll just dance with Mars and the idea of synods in general. I don't think so. So what is it for us to be in a Leo cycle? In a Leo cycle that will become a Virgo cycle, right? Here's the Cazimi, Sun, Mars, Leo, July 26, 2017, okay? There were 2 Leo new moons that year. The second being that total lunar eclipse. This was shortly after the first, which I believe was on July 21st, the first degree of Leo, which is interesting because we'll have a total lunar eclipse there this year, January 20th, 2019. We'll talk about eclipses in another session. I love that there was a Virgo moon and Virgo Mercury at this time because it in a way forecasts the next Sun-Mars conjunction in the sign of Virgo, September 2nd, 2019. Okay. It's a pretty powerful chart. Look at where Mercury is. Mercury, traditionally the Lord or Lady of the Virgo mysteries, I like to say the great guide of Virgo, right? So it's a cool thing for these heavenly happenings to occur when the planet who is the teacher of the sign's energy is also on hand. So Mars, during the next Sun-Mars conjunction, September 2nd, 2019, will be cohabiting, as they said in the old times, with Mercury, or the guide of the sign. And you can see Venus is right on hand as well, right? Venus square Jupiter at the time. Venus even more strongly trine, or not actually less strongly, but Venus trine Saturn at the time. Yeah. The Sun Mars cazimi also to a lesser extent square Sagittarius Jupiter, trine Saturn in Capricorn. And given that in the last session, and I should say opposite Neptune and Pisces, it's a powerful chart, you see. I feel like I don't want to take this too far. I will say for those of you in the know, dig the mystic rectangle. That mostly at this time, though, we're speaking about Mars is shown by Venus, Saturn nodes, Neptune node. All right, leave it there. But I'll just say there's a lot of psychic energy here. And Mars in Virgo coming into one of these mutable signs, the signs that I see as the spirit of their element, that Virgo is the spirit of the earth. It is the leaf of the tree that reaches for the light and does the inner work that feeds the thing. It is the priestess nature, the reverence, the practice. You can hear that I don't see Virgo like analytical, cynic, computer programmer, OCD, whatever. Right, and that's because I studied at Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, but it's a very organic and, dare I say, yin-based expression of these archetypes, especially those that are of yin elements, like the earth element, where this Virgo cazimi will be. I'm not showing it in this presentation, but this is not long after the forthcoming Virgo Venus-Mars conjunction. The planets also have synodic cycles between them. And the Venus-Mars dance, they do three things over the course of 6.5 years. It's definitely a different transmission. Probably not one that I do for free, by the way. But we are in the midst of 4 Venus-Mars conjunctions in the sign of tropical Virgo. It's a powerful thing. The last one was October 5th, 2018. It's actually the date of the first hashtag #MeToo. The first hashtag usage of that. Yeah, Jupiter ingress Scorpio, October 10th, 2018, not long after. Wait, sorry, all of that 2017 time. Right, so Venus can join Mars October 5th, 2017 as morning stars in the sign of Virgo. Jupiter ingress tropical Scorpio, October 10th, 2017. And it is really much at the beginning of this beautiful hashtag #MeToo movement that is still the flowering, fruiting, we can say. All right, but Virgo is about this leaf, and it is about this practice. And that's why priestess way is a beautiful thing to say. You know, independence, I love to say about Virgo. It is how I do spirit. It is how I connect. Probably not something that's taught in one of the big books, though those can be guideposts along the way. It is most likely my relationship with that tree, you know, that bird, that sun, that goddess, whatever, you know, and it's between me and spirit. In Virgo, there's a very sacred nature, and that nature of practice. You know, how is it that I chop wood, carry water? It doesn't have to be such a laborious thing. But we say priestess, and though usually Mars is more associated, certainly by me, with the sacred masculine energy. So Mars coming into Virgo this year, is that priestess or is it priest? And then that's a tricky word, isn't it? Priest. Just sit with that. Monk, yogi, green man, the nature, wisdom, the sacred attention to our practice, our nature-based practice in the Virgo mysteries, you know, our ritual, I can say. And all that to come. In September this year, a new cycle with Mars, 24 to 26 month cycle, right? Begins. It's seeded in Virgo in September of 2019, and yet we are in a Leo cycle that was seeded late July 2017. If we honor Sun conjoined Mars as the seed of their synodic cycle, as explained before, have come to do. So look at that, you know, July 26, 2017 to September 2nd, 2019, it's about 25 months in a week. Right? So again, between 24 and 26 months, very chaotic with Mars, as Mars tends to be very chaotic, because Mars's orbit is so eccentric. It's such a stretched ellipse, very far from a perfect circle. All cycles, all orbits are not circular, they are elliptical. And Mars is very extremely so. So sometimes Mars is very close to the sun, much faster, and sometimes very far away, much slower. And the July of 2018, you can see here the solar opposition, July 26, 2018, that's when Mars was both at, as it always is, in sun opposite Mars, that is always in this great cycle, the time when Earth is closest to Mars, Mars closest to Earth, we call that perigee. But at the same time, last July, Mars was also in his own strange orbit closest to the sun, perihelion. And those two things combined brought Earth and Mars closer than they have been since all the way back in 2003. And while 15 years might not sound that large, especially in astrological contemplation, let me say that that 2003 proximity of Earth-Mars was said to be the closest between we and our neighbor there, us and our neighbor out there, in 60,000 years. So Earth and Mars are getting very close to one another. And there's something about that retrograde period of a planet, which always means whether it's an interior planet, the interior decorators, Mercury and Venus, or exterior beginning Mars and on the way out, the middle of a planetary retrograde is when Earth is closest to that planet. And Joe, you see, it's like the influence of that planet, it's closer to us. So one of the reasons why maybe, as it's often in too much said, Mercury retrograde like confuses things, or Venus retrograde in a different perspective, yes, Mars, whatever, is because that planetary energy is so mingled with Earth's energy, it's kind of hard to tell one from the other, you know? We get a whole bunch of Mars in here, or during the middle of Mercury retrograde, a whole bunch of Mercury in here. That would be specifically true this November of 2019, when actually Mercury is in the heart of the sun, a Mercury transit. All right, but let's stay with Mars for a while. So we're in this Leo cycle. What is Leo? I show Arthur here in the round table, you know. Well, there's a lot more than 12 on hand, aren't there? But this idea of royalty, the king, the queen, and it's an interesting thing, you know, if we say that was seated in July of 2017, well, at least in this country, that was only a few months before the presidential election, which seemed to go into a pretty odd place. Because with Leo, I love to speak about honor, courage. Most importantly, where I call the mutable signs like Virgo, the spirit of their element, and so Virgo is the spirit of the earth, the leaf of the tree, I think of the fixed signs as the art of the element. So that Leo is the art of the fire. It is the roaring flame, the inspired heat, the radiance. Cardinal science of the elements: Aries, starting a fire; Capricorn, the trunk of the tree; Cancer, the science of nurturing, giving water, you know. And the cardinal signs tend to have a very others, culture focused. The fixed signs like Leo have a focus on self-growth. Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus. The art of their elements, and art is the bridge between science and spirit. I once heard, not from astrologer, but I knew it was a wonderful way to contemplate these modalities, as we call them. So the art of the fire, and we're in that essence now, and it's developed into a place of higher wisdom since July of 2017. Has that been true? Have we been asked to contemplate and practice a better way of honor and courage, and very importantly with Leo, passion and creativity? Mars, this outward force, Mars outside of the earth in the way, you see. And often we see Venus in, inhale, Mars out, exhale, right? As the divine feminine, the sacred masculine, respectively. So has the sacred masculine energy been playing or been challenged to learn to play in the sandbox of honor, royalty? Yeah, royalty, celebrity. These are two words that carry a lot of weight in our time because we have such if you don't mind me saying, shite examples of each. But I'm talking about the real king or queen, Leo, the one whose horse we would follow into battle because they are on a horse that is first in the line, and this is a battle worth fighting for. And more than anything else, the Leo battle, because these fix yourself to fix the world, fix signs of attention to personal growth, because they are signs of personal growth and expansion, evolution, and personal power, they are the signs that are most muted by our strange culture. And Leo is muted by saying that self-love is ego and vanity, that confidence is cockiness, that pride is arrogance. Well, lions roll in prides, my friends, and there's a good reason for this. We are told in our life that being full of ourselves is the most egoic thing that can be possible. But who am I supposed to be full of? You know, there's many suggestions, aren't there, of who I should be full of, not me. Yeah, well, I think Mars and Leo has been asking us to correct that and to know that being full of you is the greatest gift that you can give. That true radiant self-love is the way, the greatest way you can give love to this world, for as within, so without. You are the world. Fix yourself to fix the world. So that roaring flame, Leo, is necessary for the smoke, Sagittarius, to rise and take its path to the heavens and carry the spark that completes the trine, the fire triangle of Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, you see. So we've been called, and we are being called. We are in the wisdom stage of the cycle that has been seeded in July of 2017 to really come into that place of self-love and radiance and royalty and celebrity. I'm not talking about the scary skeletons on the silver screen, but rather, you know, one who radiates such light that when they walk into the room, we as flowers blossom. And I'm talking about we choosing to become that, to become our most radiant, highest self, and in our Mars outward expression of that. And of course, there are going to be entanglements with overconfidence, if you will, and ego. And although I will say ego is sometimes and probably more expressed through underconfidence, and I'm not good enough in that. You know, we see so much of that. So it's a time really, and Mars has been encouraging this for us to claim our radiance. And so much of that, I think, is really done through putting your hand on your heart, facing the sun in the middle of the day, saying, I'm doing this. Look at where I am versus where I've been. And sure, I might feel I should be burned because I'm not far enough along the path or whatever, but just put your hand on your heart and literally think about where you were 4 years ago. 10 years ago, and you have chosen to go through this weirding experience, or you wouldn't be listening to me babble about these things, would you? That is a courageous thing, my friend. You have chosen to change from the norm. Maybe that was always your way, or maybe there were significant things in your experience that catalyzed this blossoming of the flower that is you, that does not necessarily want to be smelled, I should say, by the masses, because they would rather just smell the poppies that keep them asleep. And that's okay. And actually learning to know that this is okay. And the only thing that we can do and that we are responsible for is finding our own radiance in this love of self to give that gift of love to the world. And so I spoke about Adam Gainsbourg some before, and there's a interview you can see where he and I spent some time speaking on my YouTube channel. It's one of the 13th flower, the Venus Synodic Cycle videos that I've been making over the last few years. And you could probably just search Adam Gainsbourg, Gemini Brett, and it will come up. I think we call it Stellar Lions. And Adam said this wonderful thing there. He said, yes, the magic of Leo is radiant self-love, because this is the greatest gift of love you can give to the world. But if you are doing it to bring love to the world, you are not doing it. That's a way that, you know, folks who are so aligned to my service is a very much a Virgo thing, right? How can I serve? What does my chopwood carry water? That is the leaf that reaches for the light, that photosynthesizes and gives energy to the whole world tree. You know, oh, well, you said that I can give love by loving myself, then I will allow that for me, right? No, that's too sacrificial. It's so not Leo. So think about Leo, and we hear these things. Leo needs a stage. Leo needs a spotlight. Okay, and certainly available in the lower octaves of this harmonic. But how about the stage needs Leo because Leo is the spotlight, the radiant one. And we can ignite our own candles from that roaring flame. That roaring flame must happen here within. We must be these examples, yeah, of us. We must be full of ourselves to truly give this light. And we have been shown several examples in the world without that might be the exact opposite of that thing. You know, fire is the one element we can share without giving ours away. If I want to give you my earth, you have to take it. You know? Or we could split it. I could give you some of this water, or you're going to take it. And I want my tea. The exchange of air, perhaps more of an interesting and intellectual contemplation in of itself, and we need the trees for this, don't we? But fire, I can simply allow you to light your candle from mine, or you can allow me to light my candle from yours. So there's this very powerful thing, and it is most expressed in the radiance of Leo when done right, where fire is something we can share. Now it can also get out of control, rage out of control, right? So fix yourself to fix your world. The fixed signs demand some control, demand that focus of will and power. So we're asking the Leo way to very much become solar beings and not just explode as stars that we are, but to own that essence, that radiance. Now, while fire is the one element we can share without giving ours away, we can snuff others' flames. And so I ask you to observe that strange happening in the world of politics and whatnot without, and reflect upon that within. And understand the more that we claim, and this is the key word for the Leo mysteries, sovereignty in all that we do, the less that we need those others to be the flame that lights a dark room. The more that we activate our own light, the more that we can release ourselves from the need of the distorted reflections in the outer world that will show us what Leo is not. And some of that, my friends, has been going down. Perhaps you will agree. And the antidote, again, is to love you and to have pride in what you do and what you have done. That is also in that chord of passion, radiance, what will lead you to what you most love. Yeah. So we'll speak about Scorpio some as we move forward inward to Venus and Scorpio Leo. And these two signs that are so much about the divine will in us. And this idea how we so often lose our connection to our passion and to what we love because we've been asked in a world that wants to medicate sadness or pleasure so that we can be good robots and conform. We've lost in the inability to authentically express our pain, anger, hatred, whatever it may be, thinking that's so negative. As we mute that, we also lose the ability to hear the voice of what we love. So Mars has been asking us to reconnect to that. And sometimes the lessons are taught in very tricky ways. And I've been seeing a lot of that in the world without and in the raging wars within also. And let me just say that this is a very significant shift then as Mars and the Sun and Mars bring these synods through the signs of the zodiac. And it's not Leo, then Virgo, then Libra, then Scorpio every time. Sometimes signs will be skipped. But certainly from, if we're looking at Sun conjoined Mars as the beginning of the Sun-Mars synodic cycle, as I said, I've come to do, we are experiencing this shift from Leo to Virgo. And so Leo and royalty, well, let me show this image, because royalty, first and foremost, even more than in service to the people, which it should be, is in service to the land, the stewards of the land. And in many ways, this truth has certainly been lost to the leaders of the modern world. But we are our leader. You know, if I land in my spaceship and say, take me to your leader, the appropriate answer from you is, you're looking at him, buddy. You're looking at her, buddy. You know, you're looking at us, buddy, however you prefer in your pronoun association. You are your leader. You know, you are your light, and you are your steward of your land, your body. This is a time for the Leo radiance to remember that we do not have fire without wood, and to come into the earth, and Mars coming into Virgo, where Venus will meet him there once again, and this synod of Mars and Virgo cohabiting with Mercury will remind us of the medicine of Earth and the medicine of the spirit, the medicine of our practice and our devotion, our own independent way of connecting. So how can we bring this radiance and this creativity, so key to the Leo mysteries, which we associate with sun, with children, you know, children, the creations of our passion, right? As are these books and songs we're writing and all these things, you know. But how, when we come into Virgo, do we polish the stone? You know, we have found, and we come into the fifthnesss and the Leo nature, that we are fully elemental and we can do anything we want, that we are creator beings. And that is so important to remember. But now we get to Virgo, and where we say, oh, cynical and all that, that's not necessarily what it is. Yeah. It is cool. You can do anything you want. Now, what do you want to do? And how will you perfect that? How will you polish that stone so that you can now bring this service to the community, this gift of your unique individuality, but in a way that has been polished? Yeah. And so we'll have a bit of that. We'll have Mars calling us. And this, to me, is the most important thing, especially looking at all the elemental energetics of this year, of us claiming our sovereignty of will and then applying that to our own earth, to our own body. Yeah, to come really deep into this monkey suit and to bring the fire out of the heavens and the one spirit and bring it in here to the one spirit within the hara, so that we can warm our own hearts, you know, warm these waters that too often are suppressed, so we can really feel and be really real, but control that. And be of service by being authentic. And I'll speak more about that as we come to the great goddess Venus. And, you know, I think there is time to do this today, but I think I will also record it as part 5, which feels like a very right thing to do. All right, so this is your friendly astronaut, Gemini Brett, signing off for now. And another broadcast will start shortly, where we will journey to the interior decorators and go spend some time with the great goddess Venus. Thank you for watching, whether it's here live on Facebook or later or on YouTube, wherever, whenever you are. I really appreciate you sharing in this co-creation. I went to totally different places than I intended to do today, and that's because of you, because my prayer when I put my magic bracelet on my wrist is, may the wisdom of these beautiful beings speak through me today, and I appreciate your guidance. I don't know who you are. You know, this weird worldwide web communication allows us to do that strange thing of sharing flame in this way, but understand that your own dance has been so much of this, and I appreciate that allowance and encouragement and whatever it may be. I don't know, there's necessarily words when we get into that crystal antenna side of ourselves. That prayer of, may the wisdom of this beautiful being speak through me today, is also what I say at the beginning of a session when I put my magic bracelet on my wrist, so that I can really be not only a terrestrial narrator for the celestial conversation, but can be a mirror for those who I have the honor to sit with and tune into their own soul song. And I hope that's something we can do sometime. So if you'd love to give back for what you might have received here, you can find me at morethanastrology.com. You'll find a donate button there. everything helps and puts fuel in the spaceship, you know. But, you know, the greatest honor you could bestow upon me is the opportunity to sit with you in session. So at morethan.astrology.com, you will find a services link where you could book a consultation. I would love to get into your soul song with you and hear how these planets harmonize and the squares and the trines. All right. You'll also find an events page at morethan.astrology.com. It's not complete yet, but Mexico is coming up, and later this year, Minnesota, Maine, Michigan. There's been a lot of M's. And later, Athens, Greece, and Istanbul, and some other things. California here on January 20th, actually, if you're in the local space. And that one actually in Marin. And January 19th, I'll be speaking in San Francisco. So you can keep up with that at the events page at morethan.astrology.com or sign my mailing list. And actually, the best way to do that is morethan.astrology.com/free, which will take you to a super secret page where you can enter your email and get a bunch of free stuff from me, including 6 hours of free astronomy for astrologers, video teachings with all sorts of amazing moving animations and such. And I'm very proud of that work and not afraid to be full of myself when I say that, as I encourage you to be full of yourself when you state your pride for what you have done in this world, for it is an invitation to yourself to expand that and radiate that outward, because I would love to bask myself in the warmth of your fire. We are the ones we are waiting for, and why the are we waiting? Now, friends, now. All right, so another thing you can do to help out, like this video, share it around, leave a comment. That means so much. I might not have the time to reply to all of them, especially at this time in my passionate, productive life, but it means so much when I see those things happen. So I really appreciate that if you choose to play along in that way. And regardless, thank you for taking this spin with me to Mars for the year of 2019 to 2020, this strange thing called Gregorian calendar. And I will be back very soon for chapter 5 to speak about the great goddess Venus. See you in space, friends. Love and planets.